Why Melissa Sue Anderson still refuses to watch that one episode she filmed. There's a single Little House on the Prairie episode that Melissa Sue Anderson still refuses to watch. It's not because it wasn't good. It's infamous. It aired in early 1978 and changed everything in her life forever. Her blindness spell plays out in I'll Be Waving As You Drive Away, a two-part finale aired March 6th and 13th, 1978. Melissa was just 11 when she began playing Mary. By the time Mary loses her vision, Melissa is about 15 or 16. Most teens at that age worry about prom or school drama. She had to show terror, grief, and fragility. That storyline required emotional depth few actors ever access, and definitely not at such a young age. And yes, some comments on the video dismissed that emotional toll sarcastically, but dismissing it overlooks the real psychological cost behind such a performance. Michael Landon, mentor or taskmaster? Michael Landon, creator, star, and director, was known for his perfectionism. He expected raw emotion, real tears, trembling fear, repeated breakdowns on command. Melissa later shared how difficult it was to detach from Mary after hours. Under the layered looks of an adored TV icon, some cast and crew remember Landon's off-set, long hours, drinking on set to relieve stress. One source reports he'd sometimes add alcohol to his coffee at 10 a.m., a coping mechanism or a warning sign. That pressure atmosphere mattered. When fact and fiction diverged, the show diverged sharply from the real Mary Ingalls of the books. On TV, Mary goes blind, later becomes a teacher, marries, and has a child, none of which happened in real life. She never taught, never married, and lived dependently after losing her sight. Some fans pointed out the creative liberties can upset history lovers. One comment called out the show, "It bothers me when they stray from the truth." Was that fictional arc necessary drama, or did it amplify the emotional burden Melissa had to carry? The episode that broke her heart. Part 1 shows Mary's vision clouding, panic building. Part 2 reveals total blindness, the family sending her to a school for the blind. It's heartbreaking TV. Melissa earned an Emmy nomination for that performance. But for her, the emotional weight wasn't fictional. She dove into panic, fear, and sorrow so completely, she said later she didn't fully return from Mary's world. She's never re-watched the episode, not out of vanity, but to protect herself. Many untold story videos dramatize tragedy. Some ask, are we reopening old wounds for sensationalism? But for people like Melissa, revealing the pain behind the performance means opening a door to show that trauma can linger and that even young actors pay a price. Melissa wasn't just trapped by that episode. She began to see limitations in her character's arc. In interviews, she's noted that after Mary went blind, stories about her got constrained. She joked she was blind and boring, stuck in tragedy or waiting around doing nothing dramatic. That frustration contributed to her choosing to leave after season 7 and only returning for a handful of episodes in season 8. That's another reason the episode left her uneasy. It marked the beginning of the end of her agency in the show. Tough set, tough cast. Behind the camera, the environment wasn't always gentle. Some cast members remember Melissa stayed distant, apparently monitored by her protective mother. Others mentioned Landon's strict oversight. Rumors spread about on-set tension and Landon's iron fist behind the director's chair. One Reddit fan noticed Melissa Sue Anderson wasn't a fan of the fire episode and that she often felt emotionally drained by certain storylines. That atmosphere shaped her experience. After leaving Little House, Melissa continued acting. She took roles in horror, Happy Birthday to Me, and drama, earned awards, co-produced projects, but gradually drew back. She married writer Michael Sloan. They had 2 kids, moved to Canada in 2002 to give their children a normal childhood away from Hollywood glare. She eventually became a Canadian citizen in 2007. Her focus turned to motherhood and privacy. She stepped out of the spotlight, not disappearing, but choosing peace. Decades later, fans still cherish Mary Ingalls. They rewatch the episode and get emotional. But for Melissa, revisiting it is reopening a wound. She's proud of the show, humbled by viewer stories of disability that Mary inspired, not least her blindness storyline, rare on TV at that time. Still, she draws a clear boundary. She said publicly she can't watch it. It's not about regret, it's about self-preservation. Surface Chatter recently claimed she hadn't given an interview in 8 months, or that Michael Landon had been truly evil, or that alcoholism made him cruel. Comments like Michael Landon was not evil and that she hadn't spoken publicly in months surfaced, but without evidence. In fact, she wrote a memoir in 2010 expressing nuanced views, respect tinged with critique. She didn't dwell on classroom drama or sensationalism. She focused on memory, growth, and legacy. What we misunderstand. We often glamorize child actors, but the emotional pressure, the boundary between character and self, can blur, especially during trauma plotlines. Melissa immersed herself in sorrow, publicly admired, privately burdened. One viewer made an intense critique. Emotional toll. Actors get paid plenty. But ignoring the emotional cost is part of why we need stories like this, because paid or not, the memories didn't vanish. Why it still matters. That episode aired over 46 years ago, yet people still watch, still cry, still feel Mary's fear, and Melissa remains haunted. Not because she's regretting her acting, but because it was real, too real. She gave the performance of her life. That cost something, and refusing to rewatch it is her way of keeping that pain contained.
Wrapping it up. Melissa Sue Anderson's refusal to rewatch I'll Be Waving As You Drive Away isn't a celebrity stunt. It's a boundary she set around her own mental health. It started with a factual mislabeling, calling it a 1974 episode, but evolved into something much more profound. Her performance in 1978 changed her life, her career, and left a mark she's chosen not to reopen. What happened after the spotlight dimmed? After her exit from Little House on the Prairie, Melissa Sue Anderson didn't disappear, but she did start making intentional decisions about where and how she worked. The emotional toll of that one episode had changed her, and so had growing up in the intense spotlight of weekly television. By the time she left the show, she was only 19, but had already experienced years of professional demands, fan pressure, and emotional strain that few adults, let alone teenagers, were prepared to handle. Her decision to step away from the spotlight wasn't just a career shift, it was an act of survival. Throughout the 1980s, she continued working. She took on new roles, some in horror like Happy Birthday to Me, others in TV dramas like Murder, She Wrote and The Equalizer. But none of those roles would define her the way Mary Ingalls had. And perhaps that was exactly the point. Turning down fame, choosing family. By the early 1990s, Melissa's priorities had shifted. She married Michael Sloan, a respected TV writer and producer, and started a family. Their daughter Piper and son Griffin became the center of her world. In interviews, she's made it clear, fame was never the end goal. Being a mother was. And she meant it. She pulled back from acting to raise her children with stability, privacy, and protection, the very things she'd lacked during her own childhood in front of the camera. One of the most powerful things she's said in later years is how important it was for her kids to have a normal life. That meant no cameras, no red carpets, no pressure, just family dinners, school events, and peace. The move to Canada, a bold escape. In 2002, the Anderson-Sloan family packed up their lives and moved to Montreal, Canada. It wasn't a typical celebrity decision. It wasn't for a film shoot or career opportunity. It was for peace. For Melissa and her husband, the fast-paced, fame-obsessed culture of Hollywood had become too much. Montreal offered something they craved: anonymity. Melissa could go grocery shopping without paparazzi, take her kids to school without being recognized, and finally just live. In 2007, they made it official. On Canada Day, July 1st, they became Canadian citizens. Melissa described the day as deeply meaningful, not just legally, but emotionally. It symbolized a turning point, a permanent step away from her past. Despite leaving Hollywood behind, Melissa never rejected her legacy. She's always spoken respectfully about Little House and the people she worked with, especially Michael Landon, even if their working relationship was complex. She's acknowledged the good, the fans, the friendships, the impact, but she's also been honest about the pain, the emotional intensity, the fatigue, the moments that left her shaken. And perhaps that's what makes her story so relatable. It's not a fairy tale. It's a human story with joy, pain, and the need to heal. Melissa's performance as Mary Ingalls remains one of the most raw and honest depictions of sudden disability ever shown on family television, and that's exactly why it still resonates. What other child stars have said? Melissa's story isn't isolated. It echoes what so many child actors have said after the camera stopped rolling. People like Drew Barrymore, Macaulay Culkin, and even Shirley Temple all spoke about the psychological weight of growing up in front of a camera, how it changes your sense of identity, warps your reality, and leaves you with emotional wounds that fame can't fix. Like Melissa, many of them left acting or took years to return. Others never fully recovered. That one comment on YouTube mocking the emotional toll with a tiny violin emoji misses something crucial. This isn't about being soft. It's about acknowledging that emotional labor is real, especially when it's placed on kids too young to know how to handle it. And the show goes on without her. Little House on the Prairie continued after Melissa left, but the tone had changed. Her absence was felt. New storylines came and went, but that emotional core, that raw, aching sincerity she brought, was never quite the same. Fans still watch reruns. They still cry when Mary goes blind. But some, like one commenter under the video, have quietly confessed, "I don't watch that episode either." Maybe because it's too heartbreaking. Maybe because, like Melissa, it just hits too close to home. It's easy to think of shows like Little House as relics of the past, but that's not how audiences feel. Every year, new fans discover it on streaming platforms. Viewers of all ages still write letters to cast members, still share how Mary's journey helped them understand their own vision loss, grief, or feelings of being misunderstood. Melissa's choice not to revisit that episode hasn't alienated her from fans. It's done the opposite. It's made her human. It's reminded people that even stars carry wounds. One woman wrote online, "My daughter went blind in her teens. That episode helped me understand what she was going through. I'll never forget it." That's the kind of impact Melissa had, and still has, even if she's no longer in the spotlight. So, was Michael Landon really evil? One controversial comment on the video hinted that Michael Landon was truly evil. Others pushed back. The truth is, it's complicated. Michael Landon was charismatic, demanding, perfectionistic, and emotionally intense. Some people loved him, others feared him. He reportedly drank to cope with the pressure of carrying the entire show on his shoulders. But calling him evil oversimplifies a complex man. Melissa herself has never used that word. In her memoir and interviews, she's always spoken with a mix of admiration and caution. He helped her become a better actress. He also pushed her beyond her emotional limits. As with most icons, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Today, Melissa is in her early 60s. She's not chasing roles, not attending conventions every weekend, and not constantly on social media sharing behind-the-scenes stories. She's kept her life remarkably private. And that silence speaks volumes. It tells us that sometimes the most powerful thing a former child star can do is to walk away, to live a quiet life, to raise their children with stability, and to protect their peace. And it's perhaps that choice, not the fame, not the awards, that defines who Melissa Sue Anderson truly is. Conclusion: a legacy built on pain and grace. So why does this one episode matter so much? Because it was more than a performance. It was a rite of passage, a line in the sand, a glimpse behind the curtain of what it really costs to create unforgettable television. Melissa Sue Anderson may never watch I'll Be Waving As You Drive Away again, and that's okay. It doesn't mean she regrets it. It means she respects how deeply it affected her. In a world that often glorifies pushing past pain, Melissa chose to honor it. She said no to reliving it, and in doing so, gave us one last lesson, one that wasn't scripted. And maybe, just maybe, that quiet strength is her greatest performance of all.